recording, and I am aware that the Unity Council is recording this meeting. So thank you very much. I believe Bill Ramsey and Liz Klein, I can't see if they're here yet, but they intend to be here if they're not here now. Can you tell if they're here?
They're both here.
Oh, great.
Here,
Okay,
Joe.
so
Thank you.
so the two of them and myself, Joe Fisher, are participating this evening. Thank you again for scheduling this and for inviting us.
Thank you for being here. I do want to just confirm with my panelists that you guys are all okay with this being recorded.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. I want to quickly, for anyone who's unfamiliar with Unity Council, we're a grassroots nonprofit trying to create opportunities for in-person dialogue to foster a more diverse and inclusive community. Tonight, we're very pleased to be partnering with the Hingham Pride Project, which works to increase LGBTQ+ visibility in Hingham and raise funds for organizations that provide community programs and activities for LGBTQ+ youth. There was an initial slide that you saw while we were checking in about some of our upcoming events. The Hingham Unity Council is partnering with CPAC to present a candidates forum at the end of the month on April 28th, which will include all of the open, we've invited all of the contested races to attend. So far, we're only sure that all the school committee people can make it. So we're thrilled about that and we hope you'll join us. The Pride Project is having a prom the very next night. It's a very fun weekend. So the prom is for us, it's for 18 and older. It's not a prom for gay kids in Hingham High. It's a prom for us. It's a fundraiser. So, we have an in-person community conversation coming up. It's kind of part of the Let's Talk series, but the broader topic of what is community. Very excited about that. It's in conjunction with the We Are Hingham visual project that's been going on in town. We have a Juneteenth celebration coming up, similar to last year's, but with some different stuff, June 18th. And I just want to remark on one community event. The Broad Cove Chorale Unicorn Singers are presenting Considering Matthew Shepard, which I think is a very moving piece. I haven't seen it, but I'm planning to go. And I hope you guys can all consider attending. That is this weekend. So very quickly, I just want to thank our panelists, Jean, Lynn, Curran. I thank you so much for your courage in doing this tonight. We are deeply indebted to you because you are making our community better and you're amazing. So thank you. It's going to be a great night. Thank you for your selflessness. I have to say, when I look around at all of your smiling faces in these Zoom boxes, I am filled with such hope. I don't know all of you who tuned in or why you tuned in, but I see folks out there that I know don't have to be here tonight. For some of you, these topics are not a matter of life and death, not your life and not your children's. And it says a lot about this community and about you that you've made a choice to spend your time here with us tonight. So thank you. Our hope is with this talk, as with all of them, that you'll leave like a little more curious and a little more thoughtful about this topic, about yourself, and about what it all means to our community. So thank you very much for making this a priority. It really means something. And I think we're all better for it again. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful friend, Manny Opong. Many of you will recognize him as a member of the Hingham community. And as well, he has been our wonderful moderator for many of these Let's Talk series. Thank you so very much, Manny, for your amazing contributions. He is also an NHUC board member. So thank you. And I think should I start the slides now?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
While you do that, again, on behalf of the Hingham Unity Council, I would like to add my voice to what Katie has already said. It's amazing that for a small town like ours, that every time we've invited you to come here and listen to your friends and neighbors and colleagues, speaking sometimes to topics that, as Katie pointed out, may not necessarily be a life or death situation for you or for sometimes anybody that's in your family or close to you, that you've always decided to participate. So thank you for really showing this level of support to your neighbors. Also, again, Jean, Lynn, and Karen, I've been in your seat before. I have a first-hand experience of what it feels like to step up in front of your neighbors and friends and be this vulnerable, all in the name of making our community better. So thank you. I am looking forward to having a really wonderful experience with you tonight. Before we get into all of that, just a few things that I just need to go through very quickly. As Katie pointed out, I'm going to be introducing the panelists. And as soon as I'm done doing that, I will do a couple minutes of table setting, and then we will get into the meat of tonight's event, which will be just hearing from our panelists. And then on the other side of it, we will move into a question and answer piece. I have to tell you, if you're here and your hope is to send text messages or chats to other people on this call, just know that that has been disabled. When you go into the question and answer, all of the questions will go to Katie. Katie would then send those questions to me. We have a way of doing this that has worked in previous events. So we will be doing that. And then I will take a look at the questions and pose the questions to the panelists as appropriate. You don't have to wait till the end of the event to pose your questions. You can start sending your questions in. If you have one before you came, feel free to send them in right now, and we will start taking a look at them, and we'll be asking the questions. I also would like to let you know, I've done this now a few times, and every single time we've done it, I haven't been able to ask all of the questions. So before we even get to that, I would like to apologize to you if I don't get to your question. Sometimes what we try to do is look at a bunch of questions and see if there's a thread and ask the question in such a way that the respondents will be able to touch on some of the other questions that we may not be able to get to. So please forgive us if we don't specifically ask your question. This event is really the Hingham Unity Council's way of beginning and sustaining conversations in our community in a space that is safe. The goal is to really get all of us to be curious about the topics that we speak to. We expect and we hope, and this has always happened. So we really are looking forward to everyone being open to having a conversation that is respectful, given the fact that we all know that these topics are very difficult topics for anybody. Myself, as the moderator of this event, I commit to you that I would deal with your questions with the utmost respect. And I ask all of you to be respectful of our panelists. Both Katie and myself, I think a couple minutes ago, touched on this. It is not easy for anybody in our community to step forward and do this. And I think that for those of us who are privileged enough to witness this event, the least that I think they can expect of us is that we engage in a respectful dialogue. Katie, next slide. Yeah, I think I.
The panelists. Oh, wait, what happened to our panelist slide? That's weird. There it is.
Okay. Wonderful. So again, thank you, Katie. You always figure these things out, so thank you. Now, let's meet our three very wonderful panelists. Jean. Jean co-leads a gay and lesbian group at Linden Ponds, where she has been a resident for 6 years. And you'll be hearing a whole lot more from Jean. Lynn is the mother of 2 boys and has lived in Hingham since 2010. And Karen was born and raised in Hingham. He graduated Hingham High School in 2019, too long ago, and currently goes to school in Rochester, New York. Wonderful. So before I get to you, Jean, Lynn, and Karen, give me just a few minutes to set the table. And I thought that it would be important for those of you who know Daniel Miller Dempsey. Daniel was an important part of organizing this event. And initially, we had discussed Daniel actually making a statement, saying something leading up to this part of the event. Because Daniel is not able to be here to do that, I decided to read an excerpt of a statement that Daniel had made earlier before this event. So just bear with me for a second. I'm just going to do this very quickly. The LGBTQIA plus community has been fighting relentlessly for equal rights and protection under the law since the days before the Stonewall Uprising in 1969. Where members of the queer community rose up in protest against the raids that ruined so many of their lives. Since then, each generation has stood on their predecessors' brave queer shoulders, marching both figuratively and literally towards a better future where LGBTQIA plus citizens can feel safe, respected, and valued in their communities. In 2022, a new wave of hateful legislation has arrived on America's doorstep that once again relies on the old tropes, painting queer adults as dangerous predators and queer youth as easily manipulated know-nothings. Rights and protections that many generations of queer activists fought and died for are now being attacked and dismantled by a well-funded, organized resistance. This is just a small part of a statement that Daniel made. And in taking us to the main event, I wanted to just add to what Daniel had said. And I would like to put this within the context of social justice in general, but specifically the civil rights movement. And I'll get to that in a second. Before I did that, I just wanted to read something that I think, a statement that Martin Luther King Jr. made that has become very well known in our community. Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. The imagery that this statement carries, I believe, is part of the reason we're here today. We've said this in many events that HUC has organized, that the reason we continue to be here is that until every citizen of our community feels safe, we cannot not have these conversations. Now, I say this as a straight man. I have to admit to you that I don't have the first clue about what it actually feels for you to step up in front of our community, be vulnerable, and really participate in this conversation. But as I had started to think more about this event, I thought maybe I do have an idea. And how do I have an idea? I have an idea because this conversation goes to the very humanity of the three people that have stepped forward to speak to us. It impacts the very humanity of our panelists. Every time any gay person is disrespected or discriminated against, it impacts the very lives of the three people and all of the other people in our community and everywhere else. I mentioned the civil rights movement for a second. And the reason I brought that up is that I tried to make a straight line between the civil rights movement and why our panelists are here today. Because long before the 1950s, with the abolition of slavery, one would have thought life is good. Let's carry on because everybody's free. Let's kumbaya. But the abolition of slavery did not end discrimination against Black Americans. And that is why in the mid-20th century, Black people of all walks of life, along with their white allies, mobilized to seek equal justice and equal protections under the law. So the reason I bring this up is that I am certain that what you are going to hear today from our panelists is that no matter how many laws have been passed, no matter how many of us here consider ourselves allies, there is still a hefty dose of discrimination that is meted out every day, every minute against someone in this community. And until everyone in our community feels safe, we must show up here and with everybody's support and curiosity, continue to have these conversations. With that, I am going to now invite you, Jean, to tell us about you and about the story that you would like to share with this team, this group. Thank you, Jean.
Okay, I've written 10 minutes worth of myself here. My Lesbian Life, I write. Okay, my name is Jean Ko Stewart, K-O. K-O because I'm half Japanese American and wanted that reflected in my name. I realized I was a lesbian in my junior year in high school when I had a crush on one of my classmates. She had a boyfriend and was not interested in me. My first relationship was with a young woman in 1965. She realized after a time that she was interested in men and went off with one. I loved going to Provincetown because there were so many gays and lesbians there. At the Unitarian Universalist Church, there was a self-professed lesbian as a minister. This was during the AIDS epidemic, and the minister helped throughout this period. In 1970, I grew tired of having to wear dresses to work because I had to, and decided to move to California, where I could wear pants to work. In search of a gay community in Costa Mesa, California, where I lived, I found the Metropolitan Community Church, a church that was started in Los Angeles by a gay minister, Troy Perry. The church grew and had many churches throughout the country. I found a lesbian group at the church and had a relationship with one of the women. We lived together for a year and a half. She was young and decided she needed to be free. I went back to MCC Costa Mesa, where I found another woman who was studying at UC Irvine, where I was working as a research technician. She moved into my trailer with me. We went to many concerts given by a group of women with a label of Olivia for their records. It was refreshing to go to concerts in LA and be among a concert full of enthusiastic lesbians. Later, these women would rent a cruise ship and entertain on cruises called Olympia cruises that are still going on. In 1983, I began to get homesick, so I moved back to Boston. My partner went to law school. We had been together for 7 years. In Cambridge, I found the Daughters of Bilitis, an all-lesbian group that had been started in 1956 in San Francisco by Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon. I have to drink some water because my mouth is very dry. Sorry. DOB groups were started in cities all over the country. This became my home for the next 8 years. I also joined MCC Boston, where I met many great gay and lesbian friends. DOB consisted of 2-hour discussion groups for 18 to 25-year-olds, 25 to 35-year-olds, 35 plus, and 50 plus. Groups of singles, couples, coming out groups, book critiques, forums, parents of gays and lesbians, as well as non-specific open discussion groups were held. I started and led a singles rap and a running group. It was located in Old Cambridge Baptist Church in Harvard Square in Cambridge. I worked with a group for 8 years, helping to organize dances, lesbian entertainment shows, classical music concerts, blood drives, pride parade groups, and softball games. We had our own Thanksgiving dinner at the church every year, and the president and her partner gave a Christmas party every year at their house. All were invited. I went to Amsterdam for the first gay Olympics, which was lots of fun. I met a woman who lived in the South End there who was running in the 10K race. We've been friends ever since. She just moved into Hull, by the way. Later, I trained for the Gay Games 2 marathon and finished in 5 hours, 15 minutes, and 45 seconds. Not the greatest time, but I enjoyed participating. We went to the New York Pride and carried the Boston DOB banner in the parade. We also ran in the New York Frontrunners race. We marched in Boston Pride every year and carrying the DOB banner. I was leading a singles rap on November 11th, 1989, when one of the singles asked me for my phone number. I told her it was in all the gay publications because I held this rap and many other events that were going on. She came to our Thanksgiving dinner later that month, and a few days after Thanksgiving, she called me. I invited her to my apartment in Brighton, where our love affair began. She was a married Irish Catholic with 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. Her therapist had recommended that she attend DOB. Soon, she and 2 of her boys moved into my apartment, and we sent them to Catholic high school. Life was fine until DOB had an anniversary party, Howard Johnson's on Memorial Drive in Cambridge. We were all dancing together when she noticed the hired help were starting to stare at us. She felt conspicuous, and from then on, when we were out among a mixed crowd, she felt uncomfortable. Early in our relationship, I was invited to the family dinners. She was the first of 11, so the family was huge. One of her daughters was being married and I asked why I wasn't invited. This upset her daughter terribly and she ran away crying. I later found out that neither she nor her mother wanted me at the wedding. This was when the relationship really started to fail. My partner, being Irish Catholic, was unable to come out to her new in-laws. After 5 years of living together, in 1995, she moved out. We stayed seeing each other for a time, but she became so guilty for being with me that she pushed me away physically. This ended what had at first been the best relationship I had ever experienced. I was heartbroken and went to Arlington Street Church, a Unitarian Universalist church in Boston, to see if I could meet some people. The minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church was the same one that I had seen in Provincetown. She is married to another lesbian and has been in the church main minister for over 20 years. There at Arlington Street, I learned Kundalini Yoga from one of the ministers. I liked it so well, I became a teacher myself. I've been teaching yoga at Arlington Street for over 22 years. I've been doing it on Zoom since the onset of COVID. I also do connections groups with several of the people who attend the church regularly. I moved into Linden Ponds in Hingham 6 years ago. It has an equality group. It has had an equality group for many years. After I moved in, another lesbian and I were asked to lead the group. We have about 32 who belong. We haven't met much since COVID began, but some of us have been meeting on Zoom every week. A pride flag hangs in each of our 2 clubhouses. We have a very active monthly meeting of the diversity and inclusion group consisting of both workers and residents. Thank you for listening. This is our t-shirt,
Thank you.
our pride t-shirt, Linden Pond's pride t-shirt.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Lynn, I will now turn it to you to speak to us.
Thanks, Manny. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that when we were trying to decide the order, we all felt that Jean should go first out of respect for what she has done for our community. I am standing on her shoulders to speak to you tonight as a lesbian living in Hingham with 2 boys. I couldn't have done that if her generation didn't pave the way for us. So thank you. So I'm Lynn Vanderhoven, and as I've said multiple times, I have 2 boys and I live in Hingham. And the path to get here has been long and winding for sure. I was born and raised in New Jersey and had a somewhat vanilla life compared to Jean's. I went to Catholic school and played varsity sports in my all-girls Catholic high school. And then I went to Providence College, another Catholic institution. You can see a theme here. Gay kid going to Catholic school for 16 years was tricky. But at the time I didn't know any better, right? So that was just what we did. Until I got my first job in high school and made a great friend who, looking back, I had a terrible crush on, except that we both had boyfriends. She went to a different all-girls Catholic high school. And it wasn't until college when the relationship sort of morphed into more. And we fell in love. And that was when the hiding began. And that was when you really started to feel like you needed to do something different with the way that you were living, because it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to go to the movies and hold hands. So we would bring a sweatshirt and put the sweatshirt over our hands so we could hold hands in the movies in the dark. And we learned at an early age that when we were around our families or when we were at a restaurant, we couldn't look each other in the eye because we were afraid someone would see a tenderness there and we would be found out. And that was a tricky thing to undo as I got older. But we were both afraid of our families finding out because we had friends whose parents found out they were gay and they were kicked out of their house at the age of 17. And neither of us wanted that. So we hid and we lived and we made it work for a long time. And I graduated from college. I was back in Jersey. And the conversation was, when are we going to come out? What are we going to do? How are we going to keep living like this? We need to tell our parents. We need to be able to live. And every time I thought I was going to, something would happen. I remember my parents were divorced and I was living with my dad, and it was the most benign comment, but the newscaster said something about a storm and, you know, a blizzard, and I was like, God, geez, dyke. And I was like, oh, well, okay, not this month, because if that's how he's feeling, then that's going to be a tricky conversation for me. I'm really sorry that the dog just started barking. I'm gonna have to go deal with that. Hang on a second. That was that regret not putting in the crate, sorry. So
Absolutely fine,
anyway,
please. Yeah, keep going.
I needed to come out, right? I needed to live. And so we were at a family wedding and my sister and I were at the bar, and she said to me, you know, I was just wondering, you know, is Missy gay? My girlfriend. Well, where do you go with that? And I said, you know, she might be. And she said, well, are you gay? And I was like, Yes, I am. We are. She is more than a friend. And she said, you know, you could have saved me a lot of money in therapy. Mom and I have been talking about this for years. You know, we love you and we love Missy. And I said, you know, we were so afraid of being rejected. We'd seen so many people be rejected. I'm sorry that I couldn't trust you. And then I went and talked to my mom, not at the wedding, didn't talk to the parents at the wedding, talked to my mom. And, you know, her first reaction was, okay, I'm going to join PFLAG. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure out how to pave a path for you that is safer. And then I'll feel like I'm doing something. And then, you know, years later, we had a conversation about how she was grieving the loss of what she thought our life would look like as her daughter. She had this vision of me getting married and having kids, and that was gone because I was gay. And at the time, you know, it was gone. And now here I am, right? You know, I'd go back to thanking Jean for that one. And then there was my dad. I still had to come out to my dad before I felt like I could start really living my life as a person, as an adult with a job and a relationship. And so finally, I asked if I could come over for dinner on a Friday night. That was a regular thing with he and my stepmom. And I got there and sat down at the table and said, you know, I need to talk to you about something. He was like, we're all ears, kid. You know, what's up? And I said, you know, there's just no mincing words here. I just need you to know I'm gay, and Missy is more than just my best friend. And he was like, well, we love you and we love Missy. And, you know, that's great. That's great, kid. What do you want on your pizza? And I was like, mushrooms. That would be great. And he struggled, you know, he loved me, but the concept was difficult for him to embrace, but he did. And, you know, I knew it, but I never felt it, if that makes any sense to anyone. And so, you know, when we were getting ready for this, Dan asked me what my coming out story was, and that was one of them. And I've come out 1,000 times since. I work in corporate America, and I had multiple jobs where it wasn't safe to be out. And so, you know, every Monday when the conversation was, what did you do this weekend? I used vague pronouns about the people that I spent time with, or I just said nothing. You know, I avoided happy hour like the plague. And the job I'm in now, I've been there for 20 years. So I was 37 and I said, you know what, this is the job. I'm not hiding anymore. And I had the luxury of being in field sales, so I didn't have to be in that corporate environment. But I have friends in the corporate environment that were really retaliated against because they came out. And these were smart, brave women that were really treated poorly by their male counterparts. So, you know, you just keep coming out. Every sports season, there's a coach that don't know me and my boys and my ex-wife, and, you know, we come out every school year. If there's a new group of teachers, we're coming out. Every time a neighbor moves into the neighborhood, a new neighbor, I'm coming out again. And each time, I just don't know. And you would think that each time it gets easier, but it doesn't, because you're just never sure what the reaction is going to be. The greatest gift when I moved into Hingham was about 2 weeks after we moved in. We met our neighbors to the right of us, and lo and behold, they were these two older lesbians that had lived here for 30 years and were librarians up at Northeastern, and they embraced our family, and it was just a great, safe way to start a life here. So that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lynn. And now, Karen, I'm gonna have you step forward and speak to us. You bring a really unique perspective to this because you, of the three of us, you're on the younger side. So I think we are all ears waiting to hear from you. So I'll put the ball right in your court.
Great, I'll try not to fumble it. I've been sitting here for the last few minutes, just hectically writing down notes on index cards because following those two stories, I really want to try and stick the landing, I suppose. So yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Curran Dillis. I grew up in Hingham. I was born and raised in Hingham. I live on Farm Hills Lane near Upper Gardner, near Derby Street. And yeah, as I'm telling this story, I'm going to frame it mostly through the lens of going to school at Hingham High and just kind of growing up in town, because I guess as Manny said, that's kind of the unique aspect of my coming out and my growth as a gay person. So yeah, I guess when I was growing up, it was sort of a little bit cliche. I wasn't very much into sports. I didn't really enjoy playing team sports or anything like that. I started in music and drama from a young age. I played violin since 3rd grade and Irish fiddle since 5th grade. And I was always sort of attracted to arts and things like that. And so I found a little bit of a community in that even when I was little. I don't really know when I started thinking that I might be gay, but I sort of figured it out around 7th or 8th grade. I came out to my parents at that point. And they're also Catholic. My mom's Irish, my dad's Lithuanian. And they didn't really know how to handle it at first. I think they were kind of surprised that I was so young and telling them this, which I think is a sort of a common theme for certainly a lot of people nowadays. But they've since come around since I've told them that, and I really love them for it. They're really supportive and really just kind. They're not always willing to agree with me, but they're always willing to listen, which I certainly appreciate. So in high school, I kind of tried to expand my, I guess, establish an identity, I guess. And a way that I did that was through kind of organizing and activism. I joined the Hingham High Gay Straight Alliance right in fall of 2018, right sort of when I got to Hingham High, because I had seen their display case on the 2nd floor of the building, and I wanted to get involved with that. And I had friends who were also starting to come out and question their sexualities and gender identities. And so we all kind of decided to, go in there, and we'd take the late bus home after that. And when I started off in there, it was myself and 2 of my friends, 2 or 3 of my friends, depending on the week, and a couple of the older members, maybe 1 or 2 people, and Mr. Lally, who was the advisor at the time. And so that was in 2015, 2016. And by the time that I graduated in 2019, we had, I think, 20 members who were sort of consistently going to meetings and things like that, which was really satisfying. Of all the leadership roles that I had in high school, that was probably the most fulfilling, because we really started with nothing, and we weren't really sure how the club was going to go when the 45th president was elected in 2016. Weren't really sure how that atmosphere was going to change, how our club was going to be able to operate and things like that. And so while I was in high school, I dealt with a lot of sort of casual homophobia. I mean, Hingham, I think most of us can agree, sort of exists within a mostly conservative bubble. And so a lot of students kind of grew up not knowing any gay or transgender or otherwise queer people. So that was kind of a challenging thing to have to deal with, just kind of working with straight classmates who didn't really know how to talk to somebody like me, and didn't really know how to, I guess, be polite and bite their tongue when possible. But I also am fortunate enough to say that I had a lot of friends and still have a lot of friends from high school who were lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, which I think it indicates a positive trend in the climate of this country, regardless of current events or things like that. People are able to come out and express themselves at a younger age, which I think is really wonderful. Now, we certainly had some road bumps in those years while I was in high school. In 2018, we had a faculty member share some really kind of gross, bigoted stuff on his Twitter account. And we subsequently had to kind of sit and deal with that faculty member, kind of defending his stance and not letting us get a word in edgewise, while the administration didn't do anything. None of the principals or vice principals of the high school were present for that. And so that was kind of a slap in the face. From my experience, it was kind of a tarnish, because from my experience, trying to come out while also in school, you're dealing with all of these crises of, who do I find attractive? Who do I love? And what college am I going to get into? And all that type of thing. And so it was just a very stressful environment. Certainly not as stressful as previous generations, I would say, but definitely tense, and incredibly awkward to have to deal with kind of more profound things, as well as getting a Common App essay in on time. So when I came out of high school, I kind of decided to go to school a little bit farther away. I'm in Rochester, New York, as we said in the first slide. And going to school 6 hours away by car has made me realize just how much of a bubble this town is in. I've met so many wonderful people here at school who kind of knew who they were already, and didn't really have to deal with challenging conversations or challenging, I guess, experiences growing up. They just sort of naturally came into their own, or from what I've heard, sort of just had an easier time of it. And I'm very thankful for that, but it's definitely opened my eyes to the fact that while I love this town, I think the young people and certainly everyone needs to sort of come back and I don't know, make a positive change. So show young people that there are role models of all ages who are there to talk to and there to take examples from, so that we can actually become more inclusive and more diverse, instead of this kind of weird red blip in the sort of bluer South Shore. But I suppose that's a tangent. Sorry about that. So that's sort of my coming out story. It's very much tied to political action and political sort of the politicizing of people's identities, which I think is a really unfortunate thing that has always existed, but has really come to the fore in the last few years. But that's sort of all I had to say. That, I don't know, I am happy to see that the Hingham Unity Council and these other groups are here. And I hope that we can make a positive change. And I hope that my story here has sort of inspired you to maybe reach out to a younger person who's questioning or who is out, and offer a shoulder or words of support. And I will cut it there, because I could keep talking for the next half hour, but I won't. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing it home. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Jean. We are now moving on to the second phase of the event, which is when we take questions and ask our panelists to answer. The first, this is where I get to be the boss, because I get to decide which questions to ask. So the first question is one that is for all three of you. The question is, what is your definition of an ally? What would you say you need from an ally? So Lynn, I'm gonna mix it up and have you go first.
Thanks, Manny. That's a great question. I am on my company's Pride ERN group, and it's full of allies, but they're in Minnesota. So that's they do a lot of work in the corporate space for us. But in my life, in my experience, if one person takes this home, an ally is someone like my sister. She had graduated from college, and she was still living near college, and started dating this guy and brought him home, which always meant that there was some level of seriousness to the relationship. And shortly after that, he uttered some homophobic slurs, and she didn't give it another thought. She ended the relationship. She said, there's no way I'm going to have someone like that in our family and bring him home and not have you safe and not have you comfortable. So my definition of an ally is someone that's willing to sacrifice for someone else.
Thank you. Jean.
I was brought up in sort of a mixed household. I was brought up, my mother was Japanese American. And, I was brought up by a person who was a quarter Native American, quarter Black, half white. So, I guess I haven't found people who are not allies anywhere. I'm pretty fortunate that way. I mean, my boss hired me because his wife's sister was a lesbian, and so I've been out in all of my jobs and really I've been very fortunate not to be discriminated against. I have been discriminated against by a Black person who lived across the street from me on Durham Street many, many years ago. We went to San Francisco, and a straight friend of mine, and this woman thought we were together, so she threw us out. And 20 years later, I met her sister, who was 10 years old when I last saw her, and asked her if she were her sister, and she said she was. And then maybe a couple of months later, she asked me to marry her lover and herself. So I married them. And so that's really funny. The one sister threw me out, her sister took me in. So anyway, I don't hang out with people who aren't allies. Yeah. What can I say? Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Karen?
I think those are both really well said sort of descriptions. For me, I think an ally is just someone who doesn't bat an eyelash when I tell them who I am, and who is willing to, take action to make sure that, I'm treated the same way as anyone else. I don't know, and not discriminated against. I think that's the best way I can put it.
Thank you. Karen, don't go anywhere, because I have a bunch of questions coming in for you, and I'm trying to get one out before I get overwhelmed. I'm going to pass them on to you.
Sure.
Here's a question for you. Would it have been significant to you for your self-worth to have a school or community that supported you and your human rights?
Let me repeat the question so I make sure I understand it. Would it have been significant to me or my self-worth to have had a community that supported myself and my human rights?
Correct.
Yeah. I can give that a short answer. Yes. I think that a lot of my self-worth, especially in high school, was tied to academics because that was one thing that I had a lot of control over. And that caused a lot of problems for me in college when I started having challenging classes. So yeah, I think in short that it would have been nice. I don't think the community was devoid of support, but I think the exceptions to the rule, the people who were not supportive, who were not allies, really stood out. So yeah, in short, I think it would have made high school maybe a little bit less stressful if that was a given instead of sort of a case-by-case question.
Wonderful. Thank you. I will be back with more questions for you. In the meantime, Lynn, I am going to move on to a question for you. This questioner says, what are your thoughts on the recently passed Don't Say Gay legislation in Florida?
That's a loaded question, Manny. Here are my thoughts, and these are the conversations that I've been having with friends. I was a tomboy as a kid. I played in the dirt. I played with G.I. Joe, not Barbie. No one talked about gay. I went to Catholic school for 16 years, right? So it was not okay to be gay. And yet here I am, right? It didn't prevent me from being who I am. I have multiple families of lesbians raising children now, and they're all straight kids. There was a bunch of chit chat at the middle school a few years back, and my son came home and said, "Mom, I need to come out as heterosexual, and I hope you're okay with that. You know, I hope you're okay that I'm not going to be gay." And I was like, "Oh, babe, no, you just need to be who you are." So I think that if we could all say gay, it could have saved me 30 years of shame and 30 years of hiding. But I certainly don't think that talking about it is going to make someone gay or prevent them from being gay. If anything, it's just going to damage the child. And then we're going to hope there are good therapists in the world to undo that.
Thank you. Anybody wants to add anything to it before I move on to the next question? Okay. Jean, the next question is for you. And the question is rejection the only reason why it is so hard to come out?
Well, I suppose it is for most people. I mean, I've been out all my life. I've never felt uncomfortable coming out to the people that I knew, ever. So, and then I began to hang out with gay people. So, I didn't have to come out to straight people. I mean, I have to come out to a bunch of straight people here. And I've stood up and talked about myself to these people at Linden Ponds, and some of them are old, and I'm pretty sure that they're not crazy about me, but yeah, it's hard to come out, but I guess the more you do it, the easier it becomes. You know, if you feel good about yourself, then, the heck with other people who don't like you. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I was going to move on to a question for all three of you, but just because a couple more questions came in for Karen, I need to return to you at this point. It says, you mentioned this is what happens when I change some of the words. So my life would be much, much better if I just stick with what the questioner says. So maybe that's what I'm going to do.
Sure.
Karen mentioned that he has many close friends from high school, but it sounded to me as though they were all, or the majority were part of the queer community. I am curious if he had many straight friends, and if not, was that because he didn't feel they were supportive?
Oh, very good question. Okay. Yeah, so my closest friend group, I think right now consists, like from high school, I think it was 2 or 3 people who were transgender, 1 or 2 people who are lesbian, and then 2 or 3 straight people. That being said, that was kind of my core group of friends. Those were the people that I like went over to people's houses for graduation and prom and things like that. I was involved in robotics as well as the Hingham High Drama Club, and I met and consider a lot of the straight people there my friends. I guess I was just thinking about my core group, but no, I had a lot of really supportive straight friends as well. I mentioned the Gay Straight Alliance in high school that recently got renamed to Gender, Sexuality, and Allies. And I think there are a lot of people in high school who were allies. And I think there are a lot of people still, like a lot of young people in town nowadays, like now today, who are still allies in the sense that they're not actively bigoted. I could ask a bit more of that, but no, I think most of the people that I knew in high school, either very closely or just, you know, friends that I worked with in drama club on shows and things like that, who were straight, they were allies, and they were supportive. So that community did exist. I don't want to throw Hingham totally under the bus. I by no means meant to do that. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Very much appreciated. The next question is for all 3 of you. And just, you know, since I just had current talk, I will go back to Lynn and start and start with you. What would you say to a young person or any person of any age that is still afraid to come out?
That's a great question. I would say find the people that you trust. Trust your parents. Trust your friends. Trust those that already know you and love you. And just start talking. Sitting in silence and hiding prevents you from finding community. It prevents you from feeling safe. Just find a couple people that you really trust and tell them your story. And if you don't know what your story is, ask them to help sift through it. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. I don't know what that means, but don't sit alone and do it.
Thank you. Jean?
Well, I mean, when I was in the throes of what I was doing with the community, there were lots of places people could go to come out and feel comfortable coming out in these places because everybody was gay there. So I would send them to places where they would feel comfortable coming out. And, you know, I don't know. It depends on what the backgrounds of the people that they want to deal with are. I mean, if they're dealing with this Irish Catholic lot and the Catholics are still taking the flags down, they made somebody was flying a flag and they made them take it down because it was not the Catholic ideal. But, you know, maybe they should be changing their minds a little bit now. But I think they need to go where they know they're going to be listened to and loved for it. And not where, you know, find out why they feel this way. Why do you feel this way? who has made you feel this way. You know, stay away from those people. I don't know. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Karen?
Those were two phenomenal pieces of advice, and they kind of took the words right out of my mouth. So I think I'm going to turn the question on its head a little bit and give some advice to allies. Specifically, if a younger person comes out to you, that person is the same person that they were before they said mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, Mr., Mrs., whoever, I am LGBTQIA+. They still have the same passions, the same foods they dislike. I don't know. They're the same person is the point I'm driving at. And I don't know. You can meet them where they're at and kind of see where they would like you to fit into the fact that they have this identity. And I think the other half of that is just saying, okay. And you can think about it in private. You don't necessarily have to, go out and buy a rainbow flag or do anything right away, but just say, okay. And what would you like on your pizza? Like Lynn said, or something like that. Just accept what they're telling you at face value, because otherwise it can just create a lot of tension and a lot of kind of fear. And accept that person as who they were before they said that to you, just with this new added flavor, I guess. Yeah, and I think that's true for any person who's coming out at any age. You don't have to look at them totally differently just because they're letting you in on this part of your life. And frankly, it's kind of a compliment that they're doing that, because that means that to some extent they trust you. Yeah.
Okay, so again, Karen, don't go anywhere. I'm right back at you.
Sorry, I don't mean to be stealing the show.
This questioner says, based on your experiences, how do you think the community and especially the school can better support the LGBTQIA+ community?
I was hoping this question was going to get asked. And I have one answer that I think is coming from a little bit of a place of anger. So I'll get that one out of the way. Please take serious disciplinary action when something comes up, either from a student or from a faculty member. If we want to create a safe environment for students, the best way to do that is to remove the factors that are creating an unsafe environment. And I understand it's not feasible to let someone go because of what was put on their Twitter, or some people would say that it's not feasible. But if incidences like that, come up, and they do, and they have been while I was in high school, well before I was in high school, and in the years that I have left Hingham to go to Rochester, that those have come up. So don't just say, oh, don't just post something on social media and expect homophobia to go away. Take serious action and make people realize that it is not okay to discriminate against someone on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and all the other things that we say on any sort of legal document talking about how this school supports equality and inclusion and diversity. I guess you can also do smaller acts, like when I was in high school, we would always hand out rainbow stickers for GL, SEN, or GLSEN that said this classroom is a safe space. I don't know if those stickers are still up. I hope a lot of them are. But small acts like that are helpful as long as they are backed by bigger institutional action. And at the end of the day, like I said in my previous answer, you need to establish a certain level of trust that when a person comes to you and tells you something, you're going to believe them and you're going to accept what they're telling you at face value. I think that would go a long way into transforming the environment in Hingham from one of sort of performative allyship into one of actual allyship. Because we still have people in the faculty who are actively racist and homophobic. And not a lot is being done about that. And I'm sorry for going up on a soapbox there, but there are people from the school committee here and I want you to hear that, so.
Thank
And,
you.
as a parent in town, I can't support what Curran is saying enough. If there's no accountability for the actions, and if the children that are coming forward are not trusted and their word isn't taken at face value, then it's just a lot of rhetoric. There has to be action backing up what we're saying we're doing. And here we are, right? The Unity Council is doing great work and Hingham Pride is doing great work, but at the school level, the children these days are talking about this and thinking about this at a younger and younger age openly, and they have to feel safe. And adults in particular that are making them feel unsafe need to be held accountable.
Thank you. The next question is for both Jean and Lynn, and maybe Jean, you can go first because this is a difficult one, and please do not ask me to explain any of this.
Sure, I'm going to understand it now. Sock it to me, man.
Can you speak more about your conversations with adults and peers in recent years versus the past regarding your identity? Have your peers changed over time? So there are two questions there.
Peers who are gay or peers who are not gay, who are straight. I
don't know. So what I would say is speak to both.
I think that people who are my age mostly are, whether they're straight, well, straight people are fairly accepting of gay people. I told a couple of straight people today that live here at Linden Ponds that are about my age, and they were interested in what I was doing tonight. They're not here, but they were interested in it. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
When you have, okay, again, let me not get myself in trouble, so I'm going to read it again. Can you speak more about your conversations with adults and peers in recent years versus the past regarding your identity? So I think what the question is trying to get at here is, has anything changed?
Like different now than it was back then?
Is anything different? Yes.
Well, yeah, I guess you didn't talk as much about being gay with straight people as I feel more comfortable talking to straight people today than I did in the past. That's about all I can say about the whole thing, because I don't remember too much about dealing with straight people. I mean, I was brought out at the Dana-Farber by a gay man. he just told everybody that I was gay, so I didn't mean to bring myself out as a worker there, but he did, and it seemed to be okay with everybody, so I just went with it, went with the flow.
Same question for you, Lynn.
The short answer, Manny, I think years ago, in talking to folks at work and folks in the world at large, if I thought for a second, maybe I would share something about my life with them. And the response was, often, oh, good for you. Good for you. That's great. And you know, you take that answer or leave it, whatever. But more recently, the last 10 years, the responses are more, you know, my sister-in-law is gay. You know, my brother's daughter just came out. So there's a lot more of, you know what, I also know someone that's gay and I'm good with it. And I think that's reflective of the work that's been done, because every time someone comes out, it makes it normalizes it for someone else, right? You know, we had Dick Cheney's daughter come out, and all of a sudden it changed that person in power's perspective on what gay marriage should be, right? And so if each one of us tonight impacts one person to say, you know, I heard this and I'm going to rethink how I react or how I engage, then we'll just keep paying it forward. But that's how it's changed. It's, oh, I know someone.
Great. Karen, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. I really appreciate just hearing those experiences.
Okay. So the last question is for all three of you. I did want to just throw in a word here, because I think the last point you made, Lynn, is very important. There have been in this country many times where many people, especially people in authority, have stood against gay people, gay rights, have, you know, sponsored legislation, have supported legislation that basically support discrimination against gay people. And then the moment that their child or somebody close to them comes out as gay, all of a sudden, we love you and we will do whatever we can to support you. The problem with that is that every single day there is a gay child somewhere that is committing suicide. That's sad, that's being admitted to the hospital for, you know, mental illness. This is a field that I work in, so I have first-hand experience working with kids like this. So I think the message, just to add to what you've said, is that when we're dealing, especially with young people, it is important for us to deal with them with a lot more sensitivity, and also to think of our neighbors as ours. And so if we're passing laws that discriminate against a gay person just because they're not our child, we really should be thinking twice about what we're doing. And that's all I'll add to that. I think this is probably the last question. And the question is for all three of you. LGBTQIA+ is a destruction of the institutions that we've always known. What is your response?
I'm not sure I heard the question. I think part of it was muffled a little.
So this time I'll say it in my own words. If you support LGBTQIA+, you are destroying traditional institutions. What's your response?
I'm gonna go first. And
Lynn will go first.
I'm just gonna take this one. I sent the invite to friends of mine down on Long Island, And they said to me, you know, just be true to yourself. Don't sugarcoat it. The traditional institutions founded on the backs of African Americans and Indigenous people and every other marginalized group should be torn down. Because if we don't dismantle the traditional way that this country was founded, then we're never going to grow. And we're going to be having meetings like this in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years.
Thank you. Jean?
Well, certainly I agree that we need to be inclusive all the way around, everywhere. I don't understand this exclusion stuff anyway. I mean, we used to say many years ago that 10% of the community is gay. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but we're not going to make you gay. So don't make rules against us for trying to make you gay, because we're not. We can't. You're gay or you're not. And we're not trying to make you gay. Don't try to make us straight. You know? That's how I feel about it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Karen?
Yeah, I think that's a load of, I'll respect my Irish mother, malarkey, for lack of a, well, I don't want to swear on this if it's being recorded. So yeah, I think as Lynn said really well, the only things that we like, this really depends on your definition of a tradition. I mean, if we think of a tradition as, you know, 1950s America, if we consider that as our traditional mile marker, then yeah, sure. Even though there were people who were gay in 1950s America. If we look at traditions in the global, you know, scope of things, then marriage between one man and one woman is not the tradition everywhere. A gender binary is not a tradition everywhere. In the history of the United States of America, it is not even the tradition among the indigenous people who lived here before the land was colonized. You can look at things such as, you know, the two-spirit identity that is common in some indigenous communities. So I think unless you're taking a very narrow biopsy of sort of our culture and looking at that in a really particular you know, lens, that is not the tradition. That's the norm, because the people sort of who control what most people view and who writes the history books consider that the norm. But yeah, I don't think you're destroying traditional values in the same way that I don't think the civil rights movement was destroying the white way of life, or the, you know, feminist movements have destroyed, you know, I don't know, the male way of living. This is all about equality. And if we're talking about a false dichotomy, then, you know, we're not trying to tear things down by grabbing on to mainstream culture and mainstream society. We're trying to pull ourselves up so that LGBT plus people in the future don't necessarily have to be afraid to go to the movie theaters and hold hands. And we maybe don't have to march every year, even though we will, because we love outdoor activities. Yeah, I think that perspective of being attacked or feeling like your traditions are being torn down comes from a place maybe of insecurity, or maybe of being adverse to change. But we live in a world where change is constant and where a lot of change is positive. I'm an engineering major, and I really value the life sciences. And I think it's really cool that we made a change from traditional medicine to getting vaccines and doing surgery and things like that. And I think on a cultural level, some change can be good. And some change can keep people, young people especially, from having suicidal ideations and going to therapy, and probably let them do better in school. So I don't know, the traditional values I think are pretty well set, but I think the non-traditional values just deserve a little bit more room, because maybe a modern alternative, or an alternative that just goes against the mainstream narrative, might not be such a terrible thing.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing it home. When I read that question, I knew right away that it was a rhetorical question, but I think it gave us a good opportunity to respond to something that I have heard, you know, in the news and other places. So thank you for the wonderful answers. This concludes our event for this evening. I cannot say enough just how thankful that I personally am, and I am certain Hingham Unity Council is, that you stepped forward in front of your friends and your colleagues and your neighbors, and decided that you will come forward and make our community better. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being who you are. Really, thank you. Thank you very much. And for everyone that joined us, thank you. As I always say, we know that you have a million other things that you could be doing. And the fact that you decided to be here tonight says a whole lot about who we are as a community. So thank you for being here. And Katie, if you just want to unmute everyone so we can all give our panelists a round of applause, that will be helpful.
I think they can unmute themselves. Go ahead and unmute, and I think also the BOS needs to decommission themselves or whatever. Call their meeting out of order.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
So
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was amazing, you guys.
All the panelists.
Amazing.
Truly amazing.
Should we go to the Board of
So
Select
great.
Board of
Yeah.
Select members first?
Yeah, Joe, do you want to call the meeting out of order? You there?
I will call the meeting out of order, and can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. So on behalf of the Select Board, just knowing that you were here, making statements that are meaningful and helping us learn and progress, is greatly appreciated. We are committed to being an inclusive community. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We do a roll call vote. Liz,
Aye.